The Cosmati Pavement, of course, is in the Sanctuary at Westminster Abbey. It's a very, very old pavement. It comes from about 1260 or just after. And really nobody knows what it means, except that it does have an inscription. And the inscription says that it's about the microcosm and the macrocosm, the world in miniature and the vastness of the universe. It's really based on the principle of the square and the diagonal. The square is the square of the sanctuary. If you're looking east and west, it's square. And within that square is another square set on the diagonal. That immediately sets up mathematical relationships. And within the spaces of one square leading on to another are set various circles. And these become stations, if you like. So all the intricate arrangements of geometry add up to a very, very complex and yet very simple pattern. In my work, I'm interested in things that are fundamentally simple, but have a level of complexity behind that. So I was sort of thinking, how could I bring together the sort of interest I'd had by observing and occasionally advising on the conservation of the pavement? How could I bring that into my own practice as a sculptor? I simply put together some images of the Cosmati Pavement, some images of work that I'd been doing which had movement and horizontality and vast space, and made a proposal which said I would like to use this interior space and see if I couldn't create a sense of the vast space that I usually put work into. And this seemed to chime with the Cosmati Pavement itself, which is, as we've discussed, a microcosm referring to a macrocosm. Of course, a lot of my work is out of doors, and it's often in vast spaces. And I've been working for a couple of years by the Bristol Channel, which has a great flat area of mud banks and water. I've been working on lagoons and flat areas in other parts of the world. And I love that kind of setting of elements into a landscape where they reflect the landscape and become part of the vastness of it. Maybe the pieces themselves are relatively small, but they have that connection. At Green Park Tube Station, they've just restored the buildings. And I've been involved at quite an early stage when the buildings were being designed and been able to organize the cladding of the buildings using Portland stone, but revealing the inner life of the stone, in this case using a particular stone with many fossils in. They're called spiral gastropods, and I've taken the small pieces and magnified them up to very large shapes, which are then cut back into the plain stone, so that you can see these little miniature fossils from the other side of Piccadilly. And when you're by them, they seem to bounce along as you walk around it. And it animates the surfaces, but it also gives people a sense of this being a living material, or once living material. I think years ago I used to take stone as sort of matter that could be used to make things which didn't necessarily reveal its origins other than its internal structure, you know, if it had a grain. But I wouldn't ever leave any of the making of the stone, quarry face, drill marks. It would all be taken out. It's a traditional sculpture approach, really. But over quite a lot of years, actually, I moved, I suppose, from, I was never in the sculptor's atelier. I was probably in the mason's yard or in the carver's shed. I mean, always working for myself, but I was, culturally, I had a banker, which is a block of stone, and something on it that I was shaping, or then I'd be shaping something big enough to stand on the ground, but still shaping. And then I began to notice that the stones were quite interesting when they came in raw. And then I moved to the quarries where you could see the stones being shaped, but with drills and created in big raw blocks. And over a period, I've become more intimate with why a stone is the way it is when it has rough surfaces. And as long as you understand the roughness, I think you can use it, and it just doesn't just become a sort of decorative or a foil to something else. It's something which has its own logic of making. And quite a lot of the stone here has evidence of its origins. And a split surface, of course, reveals an awful lot about a stone. They all split in different ways. I've spent many, many hours in a number of stone yards where there are collections of stones, and over time sort of selected and put things together on the basis of colour, size, texture, and internal structure. And so if they have a grain to them like that, I've found it essential to sort of use that as part of what I'm doing. So the sandstone slabs will have quite a marked horizontal grain running through them, which enforces their horizontality. I have a sort of, up in Scotland, a yard where the owners allow me to marshal the stones under gantries. And in that wonderful oblique Scottish light, I've been moving these stones around and setting them out in various arrangements, rehearsing for this moment. When the stones, actually, when they arrived in here, I think it was an extremely exciting moment. It was like taking friends abroad or something, kind of an outing for the stones, but also bringing them into the sort of inner courtyard or the inner heart of the academy. Strange thing, but seeing them come in, seeing the scale changes is very interesting. But I also noticed that the colour was changed. The one thing that really pleased me with bringing them in was how the sandstones sort of embraced the colour of the floor. They sort of looked like they were partners, and that's good because the sandstones are the frame, and the other stones like this one, which is granite and the different colour, they are more like the moments of action or focal points. I think this has been an eye-opener for me, actually, because I don't normally have the chance to use an interior space as a complete entity. I mean, we often put works into mixed exhibitions, summer exhibition, for example, here, and you hope that there will be some sort of clarity around each work. But this is quite different. This is using the room as a piece of paper for a drawing or a canvas for a painting or whatever. It's using the space. I think we want that place to be with the room. Spot on. Yeah, exactly on those points. Make sure it just goes down. Hitting the points. Oh, that's good. Yeah. I think I've been very aware in works I've made, if you think of place of origin in Scotland, that there are about 20 acres there, and people move through a landscape which is now planted with thousands of trees, and there are paths through it, and there are places where you pause, there are places where you set out, there are places where there are options for travelling in different directions, and working through a sort of collection of different paths, you eventually find yourself ascending stage by stage up a huge mound. I'm mindful that in Cosmati there are not only stations, but there are paths. The paths wind around in serpentine movements and connect various parts together. And I think people will move through the work here in ways that they will choose. They'll be urged in certain directions, encouraged in certain directions, but not dictated to in any sense. So they will form their own journeys through it. I like to describe and contain space, usually in a permeable way, not completely contained. But I don't like to fill a space. I mean, my work on the South Bank is an arena of space that people can go in and use in various ways. The platform at the top of Place of Origin it doesn't have a great monument in it. It is just an open space where people can stand, contained by rocks. So I like the idea that the center of this work will be charged by the tension between the various different personalities that hold around it, but not filled. It'll be filled by people. or maybe not even filled by people, maybe looking at it and filling it with your mind. I know what I'm orchestrating, but I don't know what will bounce back off the people who come into it. And that's the interesting thing in doing it, that people will go there with different attitudes and different things in their mind. It'll remind them of this, it'll remind them of that. I would like people to have a journey for the mind and a sort of physical encounter, and go away feeling that something has been added to their life in being in this room at this time.